Yellowstone National Park is famous for its geysers and hot springs. But what else might it be famous for? How about volcanoes? That's right. It's home to the largest active volcano in the United States. And while it has the potential to be catastrophic, it also has a long history of creating life. You might not know this, but there are some pretty big holes in our understanding of Yellowstone's past. Today, we're going to talk about Yellowstone and how its past eruptions may have affected humans much earlier than we thought. So get those brain cells ready, because it's about to get real. If you ever visit Yellowstone, you will see the evidence of recent eruptions. There are whole areas within the park that are nothing but solid rock. No plants or animals at all. Some places, like the Norris Geyser Basin, have areas where even seeds can't grow because it's just too hot. But these are nothing compared to Yellowstone's mega eruptions. In 1985, researchers discovered that one of Yellowstone's craters was actually two craters, a younger crater within an older one. They called the younger crater the Mesa Falls eruption, and it had been covered up by a thick layer of volcanic ash. Researchers determined that the younger crater was formed from the eruption of 240 cubic kilometers of ash, pumice, and rock. Meanwhile, the larger crater had been formed from an eruption that was 3 times larger, and when they dated the material, they found that both eruptions occurred within 600 years of each other, around 13,000 years ago. But that's only the beginning of Yellowstone's story. Scientists have identified 24 separate eruptions from the past 17 million years, with the oldest dating back to 16.1 million years ago. The most recent major eruption was 640,000 years ago, but small eruptions have occurred even more recently. In fact, in 1870, a series of earthquakes preceded the formation of a new geyser called the Beehive State. Geologists continue to monitor Yellowstone closely, looking for signs of another super eruption, and their concerns aren't unfounded. According to geologist Robert Smith, a large eruption happens roughly every 600,000 years, and we're already overdue. But don't worry, even if it does erupt, scientists think it won't be as bad as the first time. Smith says the next large eruption will likely produce far less pumice, ash, and lava than the previous ones. Whatever happens, though, humans should be able to outrun the disaster. Scientists predict that even if the next eruption is extremely violent, it will only affect a small percentage of the land area. So you can rest easy knowing that you could probably outrun the lava if you were ever near Yellowstone. But even when Yellowstone erupts, it creates life. After the super eruption 640,000 years ago, which deposited 2,300 cubic kilometers of ash over a vast area, life still managed to find a way to survive. A previously unknown ecosystem evolved, thriving in the toxic soil. This ecosystem eventually gave way to lodgepole pine forests, a type of pine tree that grows close to the park's borders today. And in turn, the pine forests gave way to mixed forests made of species such as white spruce, subalpine fir, and the mountain hemlock. This created a mosaic of habitats that eventually led to the modern Yellowstone ecosystem. So you can imagine our surprise when researchers discovered evidence of human activity at Yellowstone dating back 11,300 years ago. We thought we had it all figured out. Humans didn't reach North America until at least 14,800 years ago. Yet here, we were finding clear evidence of human activity at Yellowstone 3,500 years before that. The archaeological site is known as the Obsidian Cliff. And when researchers analyzed the sediment there, they found something remarkable: charcoal from a campfire, animal bones, stone tools, and projectile points. All of these date back to around 11,300 years ago, which would have been during the last ice age. At the time, the Rocky Mountains looked very different, and they were covered in glaciers. This would have made Yellowstone Island a landmass surrounded by ice. Researchers think that humans may have migrated to this island to hunt animals that lived in the forests, including bison and deer. They may have traveled along an ice bridge that connected the mainland to the island. But then again, humans may have actually built boats to reach the island, seeing as they would have needed watercraft to navigate the many lakes that formed in the glacial valleys. Either way, these humans definitely weren't living in caves. Not only did they use stone tools and projectile points, but they lived in permanent dwellings. And they also hunted horses, which required technology. You couldn't just tackle a horse like that. These people used spears and other weapons to hunt them. Researchers believe they lived in small family groups and followed the herds of bison and deer to make sure they had food. Unfortunately, we do not know what happened to these people. Scientists think they may have migrated north into Canada once the climate warmed after the Ice Age. But without any written history, we can only speculate. What we do know is that following the Ice Age, there was a massive extinction event. Around 70% of all species disappeared, including 15 of the 20 largest land mammals. This included the woolly mammoth and the saber-toothed cat, creatures you might recognize from the Flintstones. But some human ancestors survived the event and thrived. And yes, we did lose a lot of species, but life still found a way to adapt and carry on. And it's possible that life at Yellowstone carried on like this after the supereruption 640,000 years ago. If that's the case, then it's plausible that life continued as normal after the smaller eruptions 13,000 years ago. Maybe the people who lived at Yellowstone never even saw the eruptions, but they may have seen the aftermath and adapted anyway. Of course, these are just theories, but maybe humans have been part of Yellowstone's story for longer than we ever imagined. Speaking of imagining things, remember that strange rock you saw on your last trip to Yellowstone? Well, it may have actually come from the original supereruption 16.1 million years ago. And here's why. Geologists are studying rocks from the region to try and identify the magma chamber beneath Yellowstone. By measuring chemical and physical properties, they can determine which rocks came from the same source. This will help them understand how the magma chamber evolved over time and ultimately how the volcano formed. The thing is, they can't tell which rocks are from the original supereruption. All the rocks look alike, so they turn to something totally unrelated: cockroaches. Roaches live among the rocks and eat them. And since they prefer certain minerals, scientists can tell which rocks are edible simply by looking for roach poop. When the team tested the poop, they discovered that it contained material from the original supereruption. So it seems that even roaches have been part of Yellowstone's story. And we have been telling stories about roaches for thousands of years. In fact, the cockroach has been part of human history for at least 3,500 years. During the Shang dynasty in China, people kept pet cockroaches and trained them to fight each other. Of course, cockroaches are often considered pests. And during World War II, U.S. soldiers even kept pet cockroaches that they brought home as souvenirs. And that's just a tiny piece of the cockroach story. To learn more about the cockroach story and the insect story, click right here. Once again, thank you all so much for watching. As always, this has been Life Noggin. Don't forget to keep on thinking.